faceoff. Shoots it, deflected right in. Pietrangelo save rebound. Stastny stopped by Pietrangelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Pietrangelo just made on him as Frankie Sparkly. Now that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tendy Talk. I am your host Joe, better known as Washed Up Goalie on social media. This week I chat with fellow podcaster Keits Zanders of the Between the Pipes podcast. Keits has an interesting background, having been born in Latvia and immigrated to the US at the age of 13. Keits and I talked for a long time, like close to 3 hours total long. So I decided to break this interview up into 2 parts, but don't worry, you don't have to wait till next week to hear part 2. We'll be releasing part 2 tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the first half of the interview. Well, Keits, thanks for joining me on the podcast. It was kind of serendipitous. I had sent you a message on Instagram saying, hey, you have a podcast. I have one. I should have you on. And your response was, I was just thinking the same thing.
I've been a follower. I've been listening. I haven't had a chance to listen to all the podcasts, that you've been recording, but I've enjoyed them. And I was like, man, getting some ideas here and there if I can. I'm pretty new in the podcast game, so.
Yeah, so am I. I've told the story on the podcast that I've been thinking of having one for a while, and finally my wife and kids got me a book and a microphone for Father's Day, and they said, all right, do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I started out doing a podcast with a friend, same here in Colorado, Cody Beekman. He was an old teammate of mine, and long story short, he got involved in a bad accident a few years back, and which paralyzes him neck down. But kid still has a lot of passion for hockey, and he lives and breathes it. And one day went over for beers, and we kind of talked about how I'd love to be involved in the hockey community in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And I kind of threw out the idea. Yeah, I was like, I call him the hockey dictionary. I mean, he just knows so much stuff that, like, he just knows a lot, He knows a lot about the game, some old players. He's smart when it comes to the game. So Tom was like, how about, it was like, you always talk about it, you're passionate about it. Why not start a podcast? And his eyes lit up, and he was so excited about it. So then I purchased him microphones and stuff, just kind of like a good deed, Mm-hmm. And we started recording it, and he's been still doing it today. It's called On the Bench with Beeks. And he's had some great guests. He had Milan Hajduk on not too long ago.
Oh, awesome.
So he's getting some cool people here, at least in the Colorado area, but since I started doing that podcast with him, I was just always like, man, like it would be cool to do something more goalie,
Yeah.
And something that's more, I guess, mine in a way, because my plan was like, that's your podcast. I want you to do what you want to do with it.
Right.
So I kind of stepped away, and let him do his thing, and he's been doing an awesome job. And I started doing this, and I'll be honest, I've been kind of slacking, I haven't been releasing as many, episodes as I would probably want to. But life got in the way. I'm in the midst of moving. The girlfriend and I were moving in a new townhome, and so we're kind of in the process of packing and getting out of our lease at our 1-bedroom apartment, and it's just been much more than I thought it would be. So that's kind of put things a little behind. So as soon as I'm moved into the new place and kind of settled in, I need to start recording some more episodes again, and kind of getting some things out there.
And I think that was my hang up for the longest time, was like, my background's in marketing, and it's with putting out content. So I'm like, I need to have a dedicated content plan, which for me is knowing who I'm talking to and when. So I didn't even release the first episode, I think, until I had 5 of them in the can. So I knew, like, okay, this wasn't going to be a flash in the pan. But then I was just like always, recording 2 or 3 in a week. So I always had a couple. And, one of my New Year's resolutions was to work smarter and not harder with the podcast. So I'm scheduling one a week, but the week before they air, But for me, that also means for my own anxiety, I have to schedule them about 2 months out, so
No,
that
absolutely.
uh,
Makes
I,
sense. Yeah.
I have them lined up, and I've got some good ones lined up. Now this week I am recording too, because the episode that will air before this one, I got to talk to my childhood idol Eddie Belfour and his son
Oh
Dane.
man. Yeah.
So we got to talk goaltending and whiskey because they have their own whiskey brand. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah. So let me ask you, just like, do you just reach out to these guys strictly on Instagram as kind of an invite, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been a combination. Like a guy like Kelly Rudy, I just reached out to him. Uh, I sent a text on or a tweet on Twitter. Is like, hey, when are you going to be on my podcast? And he sends me a response back whenever. So we did some communicating back and forth. Now, a guy like Don Strauss, the mask maker and painter,
Uh-huh.
that was through, I would say, a mutual friend, a former uh, guest on the podcast, Matt from Vintage Goalie. He talked to Don,
Yes.
and he's like, you got to talk to Joe. He's a stand-up guy. He's not going to, do you bad. So, but for Eddie Belfour, I reached out to the marketing department at Belfour Spirits, and proved that this wasn't just I want to talk to him because I'm a super fan or anything like that. It was like, no, I have a platform, I have a following. I shared some of the
Uh-huh.
numbers and all of that, and they're like, absolutely, like to have you on. And what was fun is it wasn't just Ed; it was Ed and his son Dane, who's also a goaltender.
Mhm.
And Dane and I played for the same youth hockey association,
Oh
so
wow.
we were able to talk about the old rink and the pro shop across the street and some of that stuff. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm kind of like mostly, I'm mostly on Instagram. I don't have like,
Yeah,
like Between the Pipes Facebook page or anything like
yeah,
that. But we did it with On the Bench with Beaks, and what I would learn is like Facebook doesn't really do much. Instagram
no,
seems to be like the
yeah,
main, where you can kind of like direct message people and people are more
yeah.
responsive. But man, like I'll tell you what, I was so surprised how responsive the hockey community is.
Yeah.
Not that I thought they wouldn't be, but even if it's like, sorry, I can't do it, you're always going to get something back.
Yeah.
Like I can't say no one's ever said like, screw you, kid, or anything like that. And
Yeah.
it's just been awesome.
Yeah.
And just even like talking to other people that do podcasts and stuff, if someone talked to a goalie or something, here and there, I'll get a message. Hey, I talked to so-and-so.
Yep.
Might be worth reaching out to him. He was very friendly. And from the sounds of it, he's willing to do these types of podcasts and this and that. And it's like, wow, well, thank you. That's awesome.
Well, that's when I had the two guys from Ingol on the podcast, Woody and Hutch. It was just, hey, I love to help you out. We got our own podcasts, and we know what it's like to do this, so we're happy to help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And and the more people I meet with and talk to, they're more willing to kind of open up their black book a little bit and try and get you in touch with people, which is really fun. But a lot of it, like you said, is just reaching out. It's almost like being back in high school, in the pre. What's the worst she's going to say? No.
Right.
And
if
that's the case, you move on. I'm a little OCD because I'm a goalie, so I have my spreadsheet off to the side where there's the list of people I want to talk to, my targets.
Yeah.
I want to have them on the podcast, but I don't want to just talk to pro goalies. I want to talk to goalies of all levels.
Amen.
I had a goalie from my high school on. I plan on trying to get one of the neighborhood kids. He's a squirt goalie. He's buddies with my son. I want to have him on. I know that'll probably be a shorter episode, and it'll be 1-2 word responses. But I think it'll be fun to talk to a little guy, and kind of get his insight into the game, especially as they've had to deal with COVID. They're having to deal with something we never had to as youth hockey players.
Yeah.
But in the beer leaguers, talking to some of those guys, a guy like Justin Goldman, who's out in Colorado by you. He's not your average beer leaguer, and Bones from Nashville. They're not your average beer leaguers. But what I've noticed in talking to all these goalies, doesn't matter what level they're at, whether it be the high school kid, the beer leaguer, or some of the NHL guys I've talked to, once the conversation starts, it's like two old teammates reconnecting and just telling stories.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, just like you said, Justin's huge in the Colorado
Yeah.
community. Every goalie knows who Justin is,
Yep.
which he's one of the people on my list, and we were supposed to do something. We kind of talked here and there, but unfortunately, with his mom passing away at the
Yeah.
end of the year, just kind of changed life a little bit for him, which is obviously understandable,
Yep.
and I'm sure COVID has a lot to do with things too, kind of getting in the way of stuff, how we live our lives these days, or most of us. So I'm hoping that later on, maybe this year, we'll be able to figure something out and kind of have a talk. One thing that I really want to do, because he has a whole setup, a warehouse and like
Yeah.
where old things. It would be cool, like once this like COVID stuff just kind of goes, and we could maybe like figure out a time and meet up, and maybe
Yep.
I got a couple GoPros or something, figure a way out, maybe like film like a cool interview, like
Yep.
where everything happens, and we can talk about the books and the Goalie Guild program, lift the mask, all that. It was just pretty cool, amazing.
Yeah. He was one of the first people I talked to, and he was fantastic. Again, it was just like two guys just sitting there talking because we hadn't seen each other in a long time, and I'd probably reach out to him more and just uh, converse. But I know he's got so much on his plate. I don't want to bug him.
Absolutely.
But a guy like Bones, I would say once every week or so, we got messages going back and forth about, I saw your video, that was awesome, or, stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of those guys I would say are social media friends now. In fact, my wife and I have been toying with the idea of moving to Nashville, and I started reaching out to Bones. Is like, hey, if I move down there, you think you can help me find a team? He's like, oh, absolutely. And we've never actually been to Nashville. We've just been doing our homework, and that's a place we think we would really enjoy. And he's like, well, if you come down, I'll help show you around if you need it. If we can go to games in person and the Preds are in town, I'll get you some tickets. So that's just the kind of guy he is.
That's awesome. Yeah. He recently started following my page, and I've kind of heard about him here and there. And I got to know him a little bit better listening to your episode with him. I yet have had I know he has a YouTube channel as well. I haven't really had a chance to kind of browse through that.
You got to check his stuff out. He's been putting the vintage equipment on and doing stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna. The vintage is what got my eyes. I just remember like some of the older goalies, and it's like, wow, like I haven't seen that gear in quite some time. Nonetheless, someone using it still, and it's like, and I'm all about the old gear. I'm kind of like you. When it comes to gear, I'm kind of an old soul. I get used to something, and it's so hard to just like, kind of throw them to the side. And granted, like the new stuff's cool, and yes, I've tried some, but I just can't get used to it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. My stuff's now going on 21 years old, so I know it's time to replace it. I'm a little scared to replace it because so much has changed. I've talked to enough goalies to know that my game will change when I get into modern equipment. Right. I've talked to Goalie Gear Nerd, and he's like, well, when you're ready, let's talk. I'll help you, with some of the specs and everything else. So I've since September, I've been putting a little bit away with each paycheck. So hopefully by fall, I can order my first and only set of full custom pads, because I know since I've worn these for 21 years, I just turned 40. If I play for another 21 years, 61 years at goaltending, it'll probably be time for me to hang up the pads and be a forward at that point. So
yeah. I've been so bad with my stuff too. I just got an old set of Reebok 5Ks, that my parents bought me in like early 2000s when I was still, playing for a club team here in Colorado. And I've still been rocking them. Are they a bit too small on me? Absolutely. And have I gotten a little banged up because of them? 100%.
Yeah.
But I always, like good example is like those didn't have like, like the knee protectors, for example.
Yeah.
And I got my knees banged up so bad. One time to the point where like I had to go to the doctor and get it drained. It just got all puffed up and ugly. But, instead of me like, well, I'll be looking at new gear, I go to the pro store. Hey, can I just buy some knee pads, that I could just put over? And that's
Yeah.
what I've been doing, and I haven't banged my knees since.
I have never worn the knee pads underneath, and my Vons have that little board that's about that big. Um, and when I get hit, I sure as heck feel it, but like that's how I came up. My very first set of pads were association pads were from the 1970s, brown leather filled with deer hair. So it's like,
Right.
to me, I just learned to play that way. So it's like I'm supposed to have bruises on, the upper part of my knees. And
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
You mentioned the pads you have, your parents bought playing association. Let's back up even further before you got into hockey. So you weren't born in the US, you were born in Latvia.
Yes.
Why did the family choose to immigrate to the US, and how old were you when that happened?
Yeah. So that kind of, that was never like a planned thing or anything. That's, I'm not going to go like it's just a long story, but
Yeah.
long story short, what ended up happening was my dad met my stepmom, which she lived here in Colorado.
Okay.
And one thing led to another. Mom would come out to Latvia during summertime, live for 3 months, go back, that sort of thing. And it got, to the point where it's like, all right, it would be nice to have the whole family together under one roof.
For the whole year.
Exactly. And I from vaguely from what I remember, the conversation was, well, what would work better? What would make more sense? Moving everyone to Latvia or, moving everyone to the United States? And I think, obviously coming here, there's much more, opportunity for us younger, because I have a younger brother, how to have a younger brother, and just for us, schooling and all that, it just made more sense. Plus, language. Um, I didn't speak very good English at first. I there, yeah, I had to take a couple English classes for a few years to kind of get used to it, and
Yeah.
and kind of get the language down better than I did. Um, but still, I was able to somewhat conversate. And my mom, she's lived in the United States all her life. She knew 4 words of Latvian, so she would have had obviously a very hard time. And I couldn't imagine how hard of a time my brother would have had, growing up. So anyways, the decision was made that everyone moving here would be better, and at that time, my mom already was pretty established. She had a home here and stuff, so that was already all set. It was just kind of figuring all the legal work to get us here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was about 13 years old when I moved here.
Were you playing hockey at that time, or did you pick that up once you came stateside and discovered the Avalanche?
No, so hockey was already picked up in Latvia, and that's really where the career started. Best story I guess I could say how it really went down was going back to about 1996. That was the time when a Latvian native, Sanders Ozoliņš, actually played for Colorado Avalanche. My dad's been a hockey fan for God knows how long, and he always followed very closely the national team, Team Latvia, and especially when you start seeing some of the NHL guys like Artur Zerbe, Sanders Ozoliņš, the Sharks, and then all the trades later down the road where Sanders ended up being with the Avs. And I remember my dad just being glued to that TV, waking up late nights or early mornings, I should say, to watch live games. And it just kind of piqued my interest, and I kind of started paying a little more attention, and I think what really happened was I think my dad started noticing that I am showing some sort of an interest to the sport. So later on, my dad took me to like a local pro store, and he bought me my very first hockey stick, and he got himself one because he didn't have one as well. But he's always, he's always been interested in the sport, and he loved playing it. With my dad, though, and in his times when he was younger, it was a whole different time in Latvia, like the gear wasn't really available. And if it was, the prices were outrageous. So he didn't have an opportunity.
When he grew up too, Latvia, if I remember my world history right, was kind of part of the Iron Curtain,
Correct.
on the eastern side. So even if hockey was available to him, it wasn't as glamorous as the beer leagues are now. And I see you're opening your beer, so I'm going to get mine open too.
Yes, sir. Cheers.
Cheers. Yep. I have to ask, what are you drinking?
All right. So I went to the liquor store today, and this is a Reisendorf Kolsch from Germany.
Oh, I love good Kolsch.
Yeah. So I'm a light beer guy. I don't like the heavy beers too much, here and there, but this is I love sipping on this stuff.
I appreciate both. This time of year, I like the darker beers, but I've got a Boom Island Fixie Abbey Blonde. It's a local beer out of Minneapolis here, so pretty good.
Very cool.
My brother-in-law brought them over one of the days, and it's been sitting in the drawer, and I said, now's a good day to drink it.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Back to the discussion, your dad picks up some sticks from the pro shop, and so how did you wind up, stopping pucks rather than shooting them?
So how it started out was, so we get these sticks, right? And at the time, we lived in a home, and there was this old fence, that was maybe about the size of like a, goalie net.
Yeah, and this was still in Latvia, correct?
This was still in Latvia,
okay.
And obviously, it was just kind of like a dirt kind of area, so obviously couldn't shoot no pucks around. So my dad bought a couple tennis balls, and we used those.
We all stopped tennis balls outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't hurt as much.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, they're not bad at all. I'll take tennis balls all day, any day.
Yep, I'll wear Bones' vintage gear and stop tennis balls, no problem.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, so it started with these tennis balls, and before I got in between the pipes, my dad was like, pretend, well, these are going to be the posts, and you got to make it in the middle area of the fence to kind of get me used to, I guess, stick handling and how to shoot it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know any of that. It was all fresh for me. So we started playing with that, and then honestly, I won't be able to tell you whose idea it was, but it might have been my dad. It was like, how about you stay in between, and I'll between the fence, and I'm gonna take a couple shots at you.
Yeah, because everybody, doesn't matter who, they want to shoot at a goalie. So it doesn't surprise me that dad's like, hey kid, get in there. I want to shoot
exactly.
It. When my son and I played knee hockey, I just rifle it at him. I have no mercy on him. I'm like, I'm going to score, kid. The only way you're going to know the only way you're going to learn is if I keep firing them.
No, absolutely. And, so I got between, the net, we'll call it the net, and, a couple softies here and there, and I'm just kind of getting in. And then, he'd back up a little further, and then it turns into more of a slap shot. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I caught it. It was so fast, Dad. And I still,
Yeah.
And I don't know, something clicked. Maybe I got too many on my head.
Yeah. Were you wearing a mask or anything at that point?
Nothing. Not a thing.
Because when I started playing out in the street, it was with tennis balls and my dad and my neighbor. And I didn't have a mask at first. And the first gloves we bought were 1970s. It was a Windwell waffle board, and then the black Windwell looked like the first baseman mitt. But it was like that's all we had. And then the plastic Milek pads I picked up later with my allowance money, but I didn't have a mask until like a year later. For my birthday, my sister got me a Jason looking iconic Milek street hockey, but that didn't do anything. It was almost better if you didn't have it on. It hurt more if you got hit in the face with the mask on than if you didn't have it on.
Yep. No, I hear you.
But not wearing a helmet taught you to have quick hands.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And tell you what though, and I just, young and dumb, I guess is the phrase, they really didn't have any fear too. Never considered, I could actually get hurt. Never crossed my mind. so yeah, so that just kind of started it. And then, I kind of got excited about like the goalie position. So then my dad, being a big hockey fan and stuff, he's just kind of like, oh, have you heard about Artur Zerbe? That's a Latvian goalie that plays
Yep.
for the NHL. And, and I kind of like, I knew, like, I've heard the name, and I've seen like local newspapers, whatever, and this and that. But, I never really paid that much attention. But anyway, so then that caught my eye and I was like, oh, that's cool. Look at the gear and all that. And it just, I think that's one of those things when it comes to goaltenders, you see the gear. And I think that's what gets the most people is the
Yep.
helmets, the pads, something about it just piques your interest,
And Urbe's gear was so ugly, it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Bro. No, it had to have been the ugliest gear out there, right?
Yeah. My first helmet was that Jofa. Now I had a different cage, but it was that same Jofa he wore.
Yeah. And he swears by those helmets.
Yeah.
It's funny. He actually had, I kind of to keep up with my Latvian, because that's like one of my things. Like when I get older, I will never lose my native language. Like I'll never forget it. Right. Living alone, I don't get the chance to talk with my dad all the time. And when we do get together, we always make sure we speak Latvian, and it's kind of helps me, and it probably helps him as well,
Yeah.
But when I'm not around, what I do is I've found local like news places, that post videos on YouTube. And like when something new comes out, I watch some sports shows or whatever on YouTube. And Artur Zirbe actually had an interview not too long ago, and he was specifically talking about those masks, and he swears by him, and the host or whoever he was, asked him, was like, well, how come like years down the road, when you were still in the league, equipment changed, a lot of things changed, so that helmets, did you ever consider switching to one of the modern masks? And Arthur's response was, I tried it and I immediately took it off. And the reason why I did that, it made me feel like my head was in a barrel.
Well,
which is interesting, right?
Yeah. I wore a Hasek style helmet. It was about halfway through my freshman year of college to about halfway through my sophomore year of college when I got another concussion. I went to it after a concussion and I switched away from it when I got a concussion. And that combo helmet is much more open.
Absolutely.
It's a different feel. I loved the visibility, and I didn't have the dangler on there or anything, so I could look all the way down. It was great. I loved it. But there is a certain, if that's all he ever wore, I could see how he felt like it was just like almost a sausage casing on his head.
Yeah.
Now, because of concussions and whatnot, I only pull out the combo for special occasions. For fun, but I don't wear it hardly ever. I go with the good stuff. So when did you first get on the ice? Was that still in Latvia, or was that after you came over here?
Yes. So I was still in Latvia. So how the whole hockey thing went down. So I was born in Latvia in a city called Ventspils. At that time growing up, we didn't have an ice rink.
Okay.
And then year of 2000, they announced that they're going to build their first ice rink. And it's still the only, to be honest with you, still in Latvia, in Ventspils, I should say, not in Latvia. So once the construction was going on and it was getting much closer to that rink being done, the school I went to, there was like a, one of the message boards that has like join the basketball team or, and there was just a thing, join the future team, city of Ventspils hockey team. It was just one of those like old school where it's just like, just written. And then on the bottom, there were the little pieces to pull off.
Yeah.
Yep. The phone number to pull off.
Yeah.
So of course I didn't hesitate.
The young kids listening to this episode be like, what are these two old guys talking about? But they used to be at all the grocery stores, everything, all the college campuses. It was social media before social media.
Yep, exactly. And I didn't hesitate. I mean, I ripped one of them slips off and I brought it straight to my dad after school. My dad, looked at it. I was like, Dad, there's going to be a hockey team, and this and that. And he just, I just vaguely remember, it was like, you're serious about wanting to play hockey? And I was like, yeah, like I'd love to try playing hockey. And he signed me up. There was really no questions. He was like, all right. He called that number. He spoke to, I don't know who he spoke to. I don't know whose number that was. It might have been maybe one of the coaches at the time. But he signed me up, and how it all started was, since the rink was getting built, still, the first 3-ish months, maybe even longer, we did just strictly dry land.
Yeah.
That's all we did, and we did kind of like lots of running, lots of floor ball, that sort of thing, and kind of like, I guess what they were doing was it was a pretty physical. There's a lot of like running and sort of things. And I do vaguely remember that there was like probably like 30 kids there, maybe even more. And then weeks went by, there were less and less and less until there ended up being maybe like 20 of us, maybe even less, maybe like 15 of us, because what ended up happening, a lot of kids couldn't keep up with the dry land, or they're like, oh, this is not what I expected hockey would be, and they left. I happened to be one of the lucky ones, I guess, that pushed through all the dry land, and once the rink got built, we just kind of started getting on the ice and figuring out the actual game of hockey. So I guess to really answer your question, I guess I was about 2000, so roughly 10 years old, 10 years old, when I really got on the ice for the first time. And it was such an interesting thing too, was, since a lot of us, were pretty fresh, like for me, for example, I wasn't a good skater because I never, didn't have ice,
Yeah.
I mean, here and there during wintertime, I know kids used to go play on ponds and stuff. And, wealthier families were able to, drive outside of, our little city, more into like Riga, the capital, which obviously they had ice rinks and stuff, and go play, hockey for a day or something like that. But, like for me and other kids, we didn't have that opportunity. So we were still kind of trying to learn how to skate.
Yeah.
So once that rink was all done, I mean, after that, it was months of the coaches like getting kids get comfortable with skating, and then you start integrating. All right, let's now add a stick. Let's now add a puck. Yeah, I remember even with hockey pucks, we started with, they were blue in color.
Yeah, the light ones.
They were much lighter. So we started with those. Like, hey, try to like lift it higher, when you're shooting. And I was like, oh, I got it. And then once you thought you were all comfortable, coach threw the regular puck. All right, try now.
See, now when I was coaching high school and our passing wasn't on point, we'd bring out the orange pucks, which were weighted, and do a whole practice, no shooting, just passing. And once we brought the black ones out, though, passing was on point.
Yeah.
And with my goalies, I actually had white pucks to help them with their tracking, and that was always fun.
Yep. And so yeah, I mean, from that point on, they kind of got us to where we're somewhat comfortable. We were able to skate and all that, and this was already time down the road. My dad already had purchased all player gear for me, and I had full player gear and everything. I remember I had to get everything CCM. I was obsessed with CCM. Why? I couldn't even give you a reason, because I think it was just the name brand, and like, it just felt cool. Yeah. So my dad mustered up and bought me everything CCM. I felt like the coolest kid in the block, skating around with my CCM stuff. And I think what my coach's plan with me was at first to put me as a center, because that's kind of like the position he always put me at when we were doing drills and stuff. Yeah. Kind of around that area. Then later on, it came the time where like the new season was coming, and they're like, all right, well, we need to get this team put on the roster, and we need to figure it out. Mind you, this whole time we didn't have a goaltender. So all the shootings, everything we did, it was on empty nets, or like those little mini nets, that they had. We never had like a true goaltender. I remember having it was like a parent, type of conference where, the coaches and everyone got together. We're like, hey, so we're planning on enrolling this upcoming season. These are some of the details we need to work out, blah, 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 blah. But the most important part is we don't have a goaltender. So basically what the coach says, we're at a point where either someone volunteers that is willing to try the position and kind of take one for the team, or out of what we see skill wise out on the ice, we're just gonna pick a player, and it's kind of like, sorry, but you're gonna be our goalie,
Yeah.
sort of thing. It was
Sacrificial lamb.
yeah, it was just one of those situations. So, and they were just like that, like kind of like that. Being said, like, is there anyone out of that's like willing to like volunteer? And I looked at my dad. I remember I didn't hesitate. I lifted my hand. I was like, pick me, coach. Rest was history. It's like, okay.
So your hand goes up. Was your dad like, what are you doing?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I think he was like deep down inside, hell yeah. Because I think my dad always had passion for goaltenders too.
Yeah.
And we always talk about it, till today too. He's drawn to the goaltenders.
Yeah.
He likes the gear and the masks and stuff. And I remember like he used to, I mean, still today, he was a big hockey card collector.
Yeah.
He has thousands of them. And I know he always focused a lot on goaltenders, different gears and masks and so on and so forth. So I volunteered. I said, I'll be your goaltender, sort of thing. And that was it. And the following day, coach brought me in his office. He's like, we don't have any gear, so we need to get you sized up for gear. So they, measured me, how tall I was, all that fun stuff. And they ordered gear out of, I want to say Canada. And they had to rush it because the season was coming up.
Yeah.
Mind you, I was still a kid, and I understood that we were going to play hockey against other teams, this and that, but I didn't realize like how soon this was all coming. I remember the gear coming in. I remember the gear was all McKinney. Brand was.
Yep.
Everything was McKinney minus like the helmet. The helmet was like Ollie or something like that.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. So all fresh, brand new, stiff. So they're getting on, they're putting everything on me, and I'm just, oompa loompa, just like, how do you feel? And I'm like, okay, I guess, never had goalie gear on in my life. So coach looks at me and he says, so you're ready to start the game next week? And I was just like, what? And there it was, man. They threw me in the net next week, and it was our first season game, and it was a home game. And I remember the stands like filled, like to the brim, parents, everyone. The city was pretty good at advertising because the rink was brand new, just like hockey, anything ice related was just brand new to the city.
And
so
if you came to the States around 13, you were probably what, like 10, 11 years old at this point?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So yeah, so that's what, like squirt hockey today.
Yeah. And it's weird. Like, here, like, you got your AAAs, AAAs in-house. There wasn't any, there was just like, your like, U11s or like whatever, they didn't by age groups.
Yep.
And if I could, compare the skill level, it was close to AA, AAA hockey.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't no in-house or anything like that. So we literally just threw ourselves in. And again, like from what I told you earlier, like half of us just learned how to skate and just kind of figure out like what really like what positions what. And here's me with brand new stiff gear that just came from the plane,
Yeah.
And I remember my first game like it was yesterday, and I think it will help me for the rest of my life. It was against a team named Liepājas Metalurgs. At that time, these guys were number one in Latvia, unbeatable. Just if anyone wanted to go play hockey, most people were like, I want to make Liepājas team. Because they were just that good. In fact, they went down. It was a Gretzky Cup tournament, either Canada or maybe it had to have been in Canada. Those kids brought it home to Latvia.
Oh, nice.
They beat up everyone, and they were just like talk of the town. They're like, who are these kids? They were just robots. The coach just told them what to do. And like, yeah. And like, it was amazing to watch them. So I was the lucky one that get to play my very first game against them.
It's kind
And
of
then
like District 5 against the Hawks.
exactly. And that end result, ended up being 62-0.
Oh my goodness. But you came back and stayed in the net.
I came back setting the net. It was, I was so bad. I was so bad. A game would be behind the net, instead of me like getting in my corners and, using my head, to look what's going behind me. I completely turned around to watch the game. That's how dumb I was at the goalie position. No idea what I was doing. And if I saved anything at that game, it was like straight into the breadbasket. There was nothing where I did anything cool whatsoever.
Well, your equipment was still so stiff you couldn't move. I mean, again, young kids listening to this won't understand that when we got new equipment when we were younger, you didn't just take it right out into a game. You kept the old stuff until you got that stuff game ready.
Yep.
A pair of pads could take 3-4 weeks to get comfortable, and that's skating almost daily with them.
Exactly. And, another thing too, that I guess I can mention, like these days, for anything almost in life, you have Google, YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you don't know how to break in something, I guarantee you'll find something on YouTube and like a guy that, had the same set of gear or something,
Yep.
ways of breaking it in faster. I didn't know any of that, nor I had any resources to have, to look anything up. So I had no idea how to break in gear, nothing, so everything was just kind of like, I think this is how you do it, so it was just all kind of like, oh, so someone told me that you should try this or that. It was rough, but I, at the same time, I would never take those days back. It's just such great memories for me. Even though I got my butt beat that first season, it was just awesome.
So let me ask this: you're playing hockey, and the family decides we're going to move across the pond, and we're going to move to the U.S. Was there a worry on your part that, am I going to still be able to play hockey when we get over there? What's that like? And then when you did get over to the U.S., what was it like skating, joining a new team and being welcomed into that culture?
Yeah, so it all kind of ended up falling in like kind of mid-season-ish for us. So I played in Latvia, and I was actively playing on a team. And it ended up being at that time, actually, it ended up also being a whole different team I ended up playing for. Because what ended up happening was kind of like my age group of kids, the team that I played for, things kind of fell apart. I don't remember the details. There's some politics involved in it. Parents got involved. Something
That's
happened.
huge sports.
Yeah. So long story short, there was a city called Tulsi that was not too far from Ventspils where I lived. Maybe an hour drive, hour and a half. And those kids were struggling with their hockey community, or like that age group of kids. They either didn't have enough kids to make a full team, one or the other, but they had their own rink and everything, and they were pretty established. So what ended up happening was, to not like completely drop us, they combined those two teams and ended up playing under their name for like the first half season. So I played with those guys, and in the middle of it all, the whole move kind of came out of nowhere too. And the only reason for that was, we all knew that's at that point, we all knew like at some point we're going to move to Colorado, but we didn't know when. And the reason behind that was because all the legal paperwork was just such a, everything was submitted, but no one could ever give you like a time frame when you're going to get your visa and this or that. So out of the blue, one day it's like, oh, we're getting our visas to United States. And that was like one of the biggest things that kept us from not moving there right away, right? So yeah, one day I just remember my dad coming. I was like, hey, like in like 2 weeks, we're kind of packing this. We're moving to Colorado. So it's like, oh shit, it happened so quick.
And that's big on a kid that age. I mean, your whole world is changing. You're moving to a country where you barely speak the language.
Right.
You're leaving. I mean, at 10, 12 years old, your friends are your world. And this is, again, pre-social media. And it's like, might as well be moving to Mars.
Mm-hmm. No, Joe, I agree with you 100%. And I'll be honest, I was such a grump because, like I said, I was like 12, 13 years old. And that's that awkward when you kind of start making like real friends, I should say,
Yep.
someone that you kind of hang out a lot together. And you kind of you start to get a little more of that freedom where you can go with your buddies to like a cafe or something. It's just like you just feel like you're on top of the world.
Yeah. There's
And
no responsibility. We don't even know what anxiety is at that age.
No, absolutely nothing. All it was making sure you get on school on time, go to hockey practice, and hang out with your buddies. I mean,
Yep.
that's all it was. And if you needed some money, maybe wash some dishes here and there for dad or whoever,
Yep.
and they'll throw you a buck or two. So yeah, I was bitter about it. I felt like everything was taken away from me, and it felt like starting all over again.
Mhm.
Mind you, like I mean, I sound like I was just like so pissed about it all. That wasn't really the whole. Like I was excited at the same time too, scared probably.
Mhm.
Because I understood that, like, yeah, can I speak English? Yeah, I can. But for me at that time to have like a full-on conversation like we're having right now, I probably would have struggled.
Mhm.
Mind you, I didn't know anything. Like kids at school use a lot of slang.
Mhm.
I didn't know any of that. They're trying to talk to me about this. I was like, I have no idea. Because like at school in Latvia, English was a required class. You had to take it.
Okay.
They teach you like
Formal English.
yes,
Yeah, the King's English.
chips are French fries, that sort of thing.
They're teaching you the King's English. If you went to England, you would have been better off. Because when I was a teenager, we went to England to visit. We have family over there. My grandmother was a war bride, so we went to visit the family, and they're technically speaking the same language. And I'm looking, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. There were worries and bitterness. When it came to hockey, though, that was promised. That's one thing that my mom gave me. She's like, you will play hockey when you come here, and I will get you a team. And that time, my brother, he was already. My brother's from my stepmom's side.
Yep.
So he was here in Colorado, and he was already playing on a club team. And my mom already had, she knew people, and that was already a conversation that, hey, I have another son that's going to be moving here from Europe, and he's going to need a team. So she already had it all worked out. She knew what team I'm going to play for, everything. So when we got here, it was honestly a pretty easy transition. The biggest thing was I had to get gear all over again.
Yeah.
Because the gear that I had in Latvia, the club had bought it.
Yeah.
So when I left the team, that all had to be returned.
Yeah, it's association gear.
Exactly. So, just again, it was exciting for me, I get brand new gear again,
I get to go and pick it out this time.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like that McKinney gear, I hated it. I didn't like it. It always felt like, especially the glove and like the blockers, whatever, the glove, like it never really, like today's gloves, you put them on, they're like a sock. They're nice and soft.
I argue
hard as a rock.
Give me any set of pads and any blocker, and I'll adapt to them. But it's that glove. That glove is, I think, what every goalie says is the most finicky piece. That's what we're gonna obsess over, is the glove and the way it feels, because we all like it to be just a little bit different.
Yep.
In fact, there's certain sets where I love the pads, I love the blocker, but I hate the glove. So to me, that whole set's nope, not looking at that one.
Yep. But yeah, so we got to the pro shop. Maybe like, I think I spent like a week when I moved here just to get acclimated and figure out what the hell's going on and where I'm at, because everything was so fresh. And went to the pro shop, and and my first set here ended up being like a mix of a little bit of everything, with I think my blocker and glove was new. My pads were slightly used, just to get me going. It was
Yeah.
perfect. Exactly
Yeah.
what I needed. Um, and yeah, and due to the fact that kind of I was already playing mid-season in Latvia, and then transitioning over here, the guys here were kind of mid-season as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom got me a guaranteed spot into a house team. And I remember that pretty well too. I remember walking in that. It was a like one of them 5 a.m. practices.
Yep.
Um, Walking cold, getting that gear and getting that gear over to the rink and everything. Walking in that locker room, I was just a fresh face. Everyone knew it. So from the sounds of it, people were warned, hey, we're gonna have a European kid come play with us. They had one goalie, and I was like the second one that they've been waiting
Yeah.
for I guess months. They've been waiting for me because I was accounted for already like months before. And I showed up, and I remember being it's sort of kind of awkward, quiet. Kids try to like everyone was friendly, no one was mean or anything
Yep.
like that. But I was pretty shy because again the language and just kind of like what's going on here, but
Yeah.
super excited. Um, but I remember I didn't know what a house team was as well. I didn't know there was a difference between like house and travel. It was a whole different system for me, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't um, aware of it yet.
But when you look back, house, transitioning into house was probably a great move,
Yeah,
rather
no,
than travel side.
it was definitely probably the right thing just to get me going and again acclimated to everything. One thing that I will say by that time, I had started getting better, I should say. Like I could consider like I was pretty comfortable being a goaltender and what the position was and what to do. I had a
Mm-hmm.
great goalie coach in Latvia, a guy named by Uldis Tierpe. He was actually also a goalie coach for I don't know if you heard of goalie Artur Shilos that got drafted by the Canucks.
I think I've heard of the name.
Yeah, so he had him as a coach as well. So he was a well-respected coach that still coaches in Norway now. So he got me really set up to be a good goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember getting on that ice that first practice. In-house team. There's a mix of kids, right?
Right.
You have some decent players, and you have some players that were kind of like when I first got on ice, just kind
Yeah.
of trying to figure out the game. And I just remember thinking in my head, it's like, oh no, I'm gonna have to go through this again. It just brought me straight back to that first day. But regardless, it ended up working out. It was a great season. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of cool people, got some of my first friends then, and from that point on, I ended up moving more towards the travel side. Um,
Yeah, how much do you think that having hockey when you moved here helped you, with that transition, with beginning to um, fill in, as we talked about Justin Goldman earlier? I'm just thinking from the mental side of it, how much do you think that helped you? Rather, if you came over and didn't have hockey, how hard would that have been?
I think it would have been very hard, to be honest with you. I
Mm-hmm.
think hockey was a huge thing. Because let's be honest, like right at that age, again, when I moved here, kids are jerks.
Yeah.
Kids are very mean, especially in school, man. That first year, I ended up getting thrown into. So I was supposed to, where I was at age, they wanted to start me as a freshman in high school, but by Latvia's school system, I was still technically in eighth grade. And I remember my mom fighting that pretty hard, and she's like, "You're not gonna throw me into high school."
Mm-hmm.
How the language barrier, he's fresh, like those kids will eat him alive. And of
Yep.
course I didn't understand that. Then I was like, I don't care, like I'll go wherever you tell me to go.
Yeah.
um but going back to the hockey community, it's different. Like there's kids from slightly different in age here and there, but you got a coach and stuff, and they've been learned taught to be respectful to your teammates, and they teach you teamwork and stuff. So again, even though I spoke crappy English, like I was welcomed with hugs and everything,
Yep.
even that first day, even when I was just like still kind of uncomfortable, like, oh, I don't know these kids, but it was all welcome.
Yeah.
School, whole different story. I mean, made
Yeah.
fun of, laughed at for the first maybe year and a half I was here. The accent, just everything, just dumb things. I would be sitting at lunch, and guys, girls would, I would be the one sitting alone while
Yeah.
people are sitting in groups, and kids walking up and we're like, hey, so I heard girls don't shave their legs in Europe. Is that true? And like things like that, and it riled me up. And, I was always taught, where I was growing up to like protect yourself and like stand
Yeah.
up for yourself. And
Yeah.
it's like an acceptable thing there, you could get in a brawl and the teacher will tell you, hey, like knock it off, shake hands, and move
Yep.
on with your days. Here, there's calling your parents, school
Yeah.
suspensions, like all this stuff. And again, that was a whole different system for me. I was like, oh my God, like, I just wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
Um,
When I was in high school, we had a kid from Germany. And I don't recall if he was an exchange student or if his family had moved here, but it was kind of the same thing. A couple of us, it was a bunch of hockey players that sat together. Noticed this German kid was sitting by himself. And then it was, he was smart. One of the language electives we could take was German. So he took it for the easy A. And one of the other kids taking German knew him from class. He's like, come sit by us. Well, after we got to know him, then those jokes of, yeah, we heard German girls don't shave their armpits. And he's like, well,
Yeah.
you know what about, but it was once we became friends that those, it wasn't
Exactly.
hurtful. It was, it was jokes at that point, but it
Yeah.
was just, we see a kid sitting by himself. And I think back to it, it's like, of course it was a bunch of hockey players that were like, hey, let's bring this kid over. Let's see what he's about.
Yep. No.
Um,
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me that it was the hockey and the hockey community that helped lessen that blow. And that's such a hard age too. My kids are in 7th and 8th grade, and my daughter turns 14 this weekend. And, we've been telling her like, yeah, this COVID distance learning has been difficult, but trust us, it's a blessing in disguise that you don't have to be around those little jerks every single day. And she's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know, I'm pretty lucky and everything else. But yeah, that's a tough age, even when you do fit in. I couldn't
Mhm.
imagine coming from a completely different country, culture, and trying to have to navigate my way through.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what? Again, like I said, in the end, it really all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that I'm here, and, and now I'm a US citizen too. And it's just a whole different,
Yeah.
life for me. And I'm very grateful for it. And like every now and then, like, I think it was like, I don't know what I would be, if I was still
Mhm.
there. And that's not to like knock on like Latvia and like call the terrible country, anything like that. Nothing to do with it. I love it. I still have family there, and it's always going to be home.
Mhm.
But opportunity wise, thinking about it is like, I don't know where I would be end up. I don't
Yeah.
know if I would be playing hockey. Like, I don't know. For all I know, I'd be some sort of a drug addict. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think that's one of the things that bugs me about our country is people don't realize how good we have it here.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I have quite a few friends who are immigrants, and so I hear from them, uh, how grateful they are. But 3 of my 4 grandparents were born in Europe,
Mhm.
so it was instilled in me from them the opportunity. And yeah, the opportunity is there, but it's what you make of it. It's up to
Mhm.
you to harness that opportunity. Just because it's given to you doesn't mean you're destined to succeed. You have to make it happen. And I think so many people today just think it's going to happen because they told me it
Mhm.
would happen.
Mhm.
So you start playing hockey in Latvia. Hockey helps you make that transition moving to America. How far did you make it competitively? Did you play high school? Did you play beyond high school? Um,
Yeah, so high school. So I went to school in Legacy High School in Broomfield, Colorado. Great school. It was kind of a mix of like super wealthy, like you had a little bit of everything, right?
Mhm.
We're just the school was just kind of placed perfectly like in middle of it all. A little bit to the north of it, or there's like mansions, and on the other side there's a little lower, economy houses, or
Yeah.
however you'd call them. And they did have a hockey team before I got there. So I guess I was still in eighth grade. I get when they had it, and the team ended up getting kicked out for too many fights. Kids would brawl, and school couldn't tolerate it. One thing led to another. Completely wiped the hockey team.
Oh no.
So did not get a chance to play high school hockey. Later on, when I was maybe like a sophomore, junior, they ended up creating another hockey team, but it was like a combination with a neighboring school.
Mhm.
And you played under that school's colors, and you know how that is when you're in high school. You rep your high school colors.
Yes.
You're not gonna wear some other team's jersey,
Yes.
even if it gave you the opportunity to play hockey and get extra time. Like, nah, I'm good. I'm better than So I never picked up that opportunity. When it comes to competitive hockey here in the United States, I only made it up to the A's.
Okay.
I tried out for double A's and stuff, and I've said this in some of my other interviews on my podcast that I with Jeff Wolf. I had a good conversation,
Mhm.
which is another native goalie here. One thing that I noticed here in the United States, like in Latvia, were there like politics kind of involved in the hockey? Absolutely, there was. But the politics here in the United States and how involved parents get is like unbelievable.
Yes.
A lot of the times when you went to tryouts, and you end up finding that out later down the road, right? The coaches and stuff already had the teams picked out
Yep.
before kids even had the chance to try out. You could be the greatest skater, the greatest goalie, whatever. But, George's dad is my, wife's lawyer or something. So
Yeah.
I owe him one sort of thing.
Or they sponsor the team jerseys. It's funny you say that because I was coaching at the high school level before we had kids, and I was a goalie coach for the high school team, and then I worked with the JV defense. And we would offer our time during the week of tryouts for the association, and I would sit there for a week evaluating goalies, offering my recommendations. And after the first year, like I saw the rosters, like that kid's not the A goalie. That's the kid I said that should be the C goalie. Yeah, but his dad this, and it was like, So you just said I wasted a week of evenings for nothing.
Exactly.
And the other high school coach is like, pretty much, but they like to see us out there. It's good for. I said, next year I'm not doing it. There's other things I can do with my time than waste it when the team's already made. And honestly, my son loves to skate on our backyard rink, loves hockey, but he hasn't played organized hockey because of that. He's seen it, and here in Minnesota, even at 10, 12 years old, they skate 6 to 8 times a week, and he's going, that's too much for me. And for it to be decided by politics, so he plays baseball.
Yeah, it's a shame. And I hate to say it, but like a lot of times I feel it's not even about talent anymore or how hard you work or anything like that. It's who you know
and how
well you know him. Exactly.
Yep.
And one I remember one time I played 1 year in already had played 1 year in the A's, and I had like an assistant coach that I knew well and had made a great relationship with him in that season. When our season ended, he ended up moving away from the A's and ended up going like a step above to double A's to coach with this other head coach and create this, next team that's going to bring the cup back for the, for the house, for the club team. And my parents had signed me up for tryouts again for that season. And it was still for the A teams. I was just comfortable with it at that time. But the coach reached out to me. He saw me that I was trying out for the A's, and was like, how come aren't you doing the double A's? I was like, I don't know. I guess I didn't have the confidence maybe, or, I was like, I don't know. Like, I just thought I was going to play for the A's again. I was like, no, you have to try out for double A's and stuff. He kind of like, I almost like I have to have you because he knew who I was and how I played. He knew my style. So it was kind of like, well, okay. So he like arranged everything for me to kind of get thrown in like a day late to the double A tryouts. And I'll be honest, I remember those tryouts, and I think that was the best tryouts I've ever done. Played so well. I was so confident. I had awesome saves. I did well. Were the other goalies trying out good? Absolutely. Those dudes were good too. But I felt that I at least probably would have earned maybe a backup spot to where then down the road I could maybe prove myself and kind of weasel my way in maybe to a starter goalie. Anyway, so now I'm doing 2 tryouts, right? So I'm doing this double A's, and then I'm running to the A's because nothing's guaranteed yet, right? So I'm just like back and forth and a lot of ice time. Awesome, right? But at the same exhausted, like pretty, spent with how much ice time. And again, like my poor parents, having to sit more time at the ice rinks and stuff when they probably maybe wanted to do some other things, out of their day. Um, so the day, last set of the tryouts end and all this. So now we're all sitting in our waiting room, and they call one another and they'll let you know if you made the team or you didn't make the team, and your weaknesses and things that you did awesome, all that stuff. So I get pulled in with these double A guys, and of course there's my old coach sitting there too and stuff, and they're praising me, how well I did and impressive work and this and that. And then towards the end, but we're gonna have to go with the 2 other guys because this is their last year. They can play for this team, because next year, the age groups, they just can't no more play in that league, or they gotta move on and start looking at like whatever else. So for those reasons, we're gonna have to part ways. And I was just so freaking pissed.
Yeah, had nothing to do about the talent.
I absolutely nothing to do. It was sorry. We just got to go with the boys that they just deserve to play one more last time. I mean, respect to them. Like it was an awesome memory for those 2 goalies to maybe play one more last time with some buddies that they might not see ever again or whatnot. But again, that just proved right there. It's like I had nothing to do with talent or nothing. It was just who they knew and for what reasons. And I just felt so upset about it. And it's like, you wasted my time. Like, appreciate the extra ice time. Like, but wasted my time, wasted my parents' time. Like, you should have, why didn't you just tell me right off the bat, that, hey, like, we might be able to get you, but keep in mind, like these 2 other goalies that are trying out here, this would be technically their last year. They're qualified to play in this league.
Yeah, these are the guys you got to steal a spot from.
Yeah. And that would have made it maybe made it a different, decision. And maybe I would have said, nah, I'm good. Thanks. Maybe tried it next year or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just the travel hockey here kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And in the end, what ended up happening was I just got kind of burnt out. And I quit. I completely quit hockey, and I didn't play hockey I did like 7 years, maybe longer.
What
and I didn't do any. 2016, Avs outdoor game with Red Wings alumni game.
Yeah.
Got tickets, and that was the first game that I went and watched, because like I said, I completely gave up hockey. Gear was rotting away in the corner of parents' garage. I had moved on, living roommates with buddies, just a whole different life, chasing girls, doing things that maybe I should have waited later in my life to do. Just hockey was non-existent. That outdoor game came at Coors Field. It was just like a big, like, holy crap, like hockey outside, like we have to go. So me and one of my friends, we ended up purchasing tickets, and it was like a 2-day event. You had the alumni game the first night, and then the actual Avs played the Wings the following game. Well, anyways, the day after everything was done, um, my mom works for Crunky Sports, and she was able to hook me up with some passes to go skate on that ice afterwards, just like a normal free
Yeah, a
skate.
little open skate. Yeah.
Um, at that point, mind you, again, 7 years I hadn't played. I pulled out my old goalie skates, rusted out, trashed, straight to the trash. I was like, well, I don't have skates. My mom's like, well, they're gonna have rentals and stuff. I'm like, okay. So I went over there with my brother, rented some dull skates, and got on that ice and started skating around and just like the fresh air of the ice, and just like they're like, oh my God, the Avs played here the other day, the Red Wings. And like looking up, in the air, it was like nothing above you. And it was nighttime. You could watch, starlight. Oh, it was just like, wow, just like blew my mind. Right.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like something clicked again. And I was just like, why the hell am I not playing? Like, I'm supposed to play.
There's a lot of players I know, especially goalies, that after that competitive era or that chapter closes, you almost need that time away from the game to fall back in love with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It sounds like that's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. And like something just clicked again. So the next day after that, I got online and I started looking at gear. What I did was I went back to my parents' house, pulled all my gear out, and started kind of going through things. What fits, what doesn't fit, what's ruined, what isn't. Made myself a little list of things, and then started going online, going to like local Play It Again Sports, wherever I could, and put myself together a set of gear.
Yeah.
And here in Colorado, we have like a Facebook page for goaltenders.
Yeah, we have one here in the Twin Cities. Yeah.
Called Colorado Hockey Goalies. And some of my friends I'd already been playing beer league and such, got me invited to those groups, and I got in, kind of weaseled my way in, got myself introduced, like, hey, like, haven't played in a long time, but looking to get back in, sort of thing. And
that's the hardest thing, is once you get back into it, it's like, all right, now I need to find a team so I can skate regularly.
Yep, exactly. And next thing you know, I'm getting in, introduced to all these, local players and stuff that have no other people that always get ice time, all this stuff. And I'm getting all this ice time now, and getting invited to play or like, sub in, and that's just kind of how I got weaseled back into hockey again. Played for local beer leaguers here and there, and then down the road ended up meeting some other people and started playing for a firefighter team, and that then got my old childhood passion of maybe one day becoming a firefighter into reality. Those guys again opened a whole other door for me.
Yep.
And I got enrolled in school, started doing that. And here I am, man. I'm just, still doing some beer league hockey, playing now for a hockey police combined team.
Oh, that's so you're playing with a bunch of guys that couldn't pass the fire exam.
Yeah, that's one of the jokes that a lot of those guys. That's probably one of the favorite jokes that most people throw, is like, oh, I could pass the fire exam.
The team I play on is almost all local firemen, and we got one poor cop on the team, and he gets a lot of abuse in the locker room, and he just takes it. He goes, I knew what I was getting into, skating on a team with a bunch of firemen. Now, I'm not a fireman, but as we've talked, my dad was in Chicago for nearly 30 years. So, but I grew up going to the firehouse with them, and where I'm at, all my teammates, they're all volunteer firefighters. And, one of them said, you probably see more than, half the guys on our department going to work with your dad. So, you fit in. Now, there's a few guys on the team that aren't firemen, so I'm not the only one, but they're like, you fit in. You're one of us. You speak the language. You're part of the brotherhood, even though you haven't actually done the job.
That's kind of how it. Well, what's funny, how I ended up getting weaseled in with these guys too was, as I was going through school and stuff, afterwards, some of the requirements is to, do like ride-alongs with like local fire departments, then kind of like see like the real life type of stuff and how things operate and this and that. And I end up, assigned to a certain station and go in first morning, and I end up having to work a shift with one of my old EMT instructors. He's a firefighter paramedic.
Yep.
And per usual at the kitchen table, we all start talking this and that. So what do you do? What do you like doing for fun? And I tell him like I play hockey on the side. That's like my hobby, really. Outside of studies and go kind of getting my certs through school and this and that. And the guy's like, "Oh, well, I play hockey, and we got like this whole team," and he's telling me all about it. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool," and it's like, that's awesome and this and that, not thinking anything of it. And then he's just like, "In fact, I think our goalie can't make it to our next game this like Sunday or something like that." And he's like, "Do you think you could do it?" And I was like, "I'd love to come play some hockey with you guys if if you got the spot for me." Or sure thing. The next day I get a text from a random number like, "Hey, this is so-and-so, and I heard from so-and-so that you're a goalie and we could use one today. Would you like to come and play for us?" And of course I agreed. And next thing you know, I'm on their team now full time, and they just stick that one game to sub in.
Well, it's funny because that's how I got on the team I'm on now. I've another story I've told on the podcast. We've been in our house now 8 years, and our first year here, we're at the National Night Out at the park, and the engine pulls up, and getting off the rig is one of my college teammates, and we just kind of stop and look at each other, and I go, "Well, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I'm on the fire department." "What are you doing here?" I was like, "I live here." He's like, "I live less than a mile away in the next development over." And so we exchanged numbers, and then I don't remember if it was that fall or the next fall after. But I get a text, "Hey, our goalie can't come back. You want to play for us this year?" It's like, "Yeah." Well, I still play. He now has small kids, and he's not on the team anymore, but I'm still around on the team. The Chiefs keep trying to get me to join the fire department because I have a job where I get to work from home. And they're like, "That's our hardest part to cover, is the middle of the day when all the guys are at work and not in the community." And so I was like, "What's your drill night?" And they're like, "Tuesday night." I said, "What night are every single kid's activity?" "Tuesday night." I said, "Come back to me in 5 years when both my kids are off to college." And they're like, "Yeah, that's our biggest drawback for dads, is that's the deal." But I have a feeling once they're both in college, I'll probably wind up taking all the classes and everything. And, joining the fire department, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
it's in the blood though. It kind of like goaltending. It's a calling. It really is. Like I said, my dad was one, so I went to the firehouse with him all the time. But he actually met my mom because one of his coworkers was married to my aunt, and he's like, "Well, her sister is single. You should meet her." But then I have a uncle over in England who is a fireman. I have a cousin who went through school but didn't make it through. I got another cousin who's on the job. It's the family business.
That's cool, man. Those are the cool stories. And I have a lot of guys that I work with, that are on my department, that similar story. Dad was, grandpa was, and it just kind of like when you grow up, that's what you got. You just got to keep. It's kind of like military. A lot of people, dad went to the army or was a Marine or something like that, and it's just kind of like, well, I got to do it too. It's a keep it going. And it wasn't like that for me. It was just it's something I've always wanted to do. And I'll be honest, for the longest time, like I didn't have the balls to do it. I'll be honest. I just and it was something that I always talked about. And I think because of hockey, meeting all those other guys gave me that extra courage.
Like,
and
why
again,
aren't I?
exactly. And gave me, again, the right people that I was then able to, go out for lunch or a beer to have like a one-on-one. Is like, well, tell me more about it. How
Yeah.
does it work and stuff? And they're like, and just kind of lead me the right direction, where I should start, what I should look into, where I should enroll.
Right. They're going to help you through. They're going to guide you and mentor you. I get it. Everybody asks, well, how come you never got on the job? And I said, it hasn't been because of a lack of want. It's been strictly timing. When I graduated high school in 1999, it had been, I want to say 4 or 5 years since Chicago had given a test. And rumor was it that within the year they'd be given a test. So I told my dad, okay, let me know when they're going to give it. I go through 4 years of college and they still hadn't given a test.
Mm-hmm.
But I graduated college and rumor had it within the year they'd be giving a test.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I moved to Minnesota and started a job, got married, and 3 years later, they say, we're giving a test. Well, we had just bought a house and found out my wife was pregnant. Not a good time to take the test.
No, not at all. No.
So the only other time Chicago was given a test was 4 or 5 years ago. We were on a family cruise with my sister's family and my parents in the Gulf of Mexico when they gave the test. And I looked at my dad. I said, well, I think that's just the universe telling me I'm not going to be a Chicago fireman because now I'm too old to take their test. I took St. Paul's, but they only take 30 guys a year, if that. And they keep their list for 3 years. So if you don't finish in the top 100, you got no chance. But I didn't live in the city of St. Paul. I was not a veteran, and I hate saying it, but I was a white guy. So right there, I lost 15 points before I even filled in my name.
Yeah, no.
I knew my chances weren't good there. I landed 777 on the list. And it's fine. I have some college teammates that wound up on New York. And the one guy's like, well, I was like 14 something on the New York test. And I can't, I was called down in the first year. It's like, Jimmy, bring in 30 guys a year. They don't bring in 400 every class. And as my dad said in Chicago, for every 100 they bring in, 200 don't pass the background or drug test. And I said, I don't have to worry about the drug test, but I might need to worry about the background because I'm a goalie. But that's when Jimmy, he was like, you probably won't get called. In fact, he plays for the FDNY hockey team.
That's amazing.
He was part of the line brawl with the NYPD at Nassau Coliseum a couple of years ago, the infamous line brawl. So what do you love most about the job?
Oh, man. I mean, it's there's so many ways to describe it, right? I mean, the cliche question is always like helping people, being able to do something good and coming home the next day and say, just like, I did something good today. I helped someone, but whatever the case may be, even, old grandma that, wasn't able to, get her groceries upstairs or so, even like the silliest things like that, like it just goes a long way. It's like, man, like this is so cool that like I'm fortunate to do something that I can go home and be like, I did something good today. Outside of that too is like, what I love that you never know. Every day you go on shift, you don't know what that day's going to bring. Right. As opposed to like, your regular job, like before this, I used to work as a parts manager at a car shop. Yep. So it was sitting on the computer, talking to the same vendor, ordering the same parts, like it was just like a routine. It was the same thing over and over and over, where you're almost become like a robot, it's just like, I don't know. It's, I guess you don't gain much from it. And the fire department, you never, it's something different every day.
Yeah. Even the routine is not routine.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And I know what you're saying about, just being able to help somebody. It's one of the few photos I have when I went to work with my dad. And I don't know if you can see here, but it was a car fire. It was a guy's work van. He was an electrician. And when you opened it up, it was just fully involved, but he had done such a great job of, setting up his work van that he had all these tools and parts and everything, where it was like, okay, we need to get the pike poles in there. We need to salvage as much of this as we can. His
Absolutely.
van was a goner and everything else, but he was
But
just
those,
so appreciative for what little we were able to save for him. And it was like, we
absolutely.
felt good that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the car fires and dumpster fires because those were things that I could get on the nozzle for when I went to work with my dad. Otherwise, I was usually the hydrant man.
Yeah.
There was another fire. God, me and my dad talk about it almost every time we get together. It was a high-rise project building. They had recently bricked up all of the windows in the hallway, and the fire department told them not to because first fire, they're going to have to knock them all out. Well, of course, there was a fire in the incinerator in the basement. But they have to go and knock out, they need to ventilate because the inhabitants had closed their windows and opened their doors. So now you got the smoke. So they got to take care of all of this. And my dad, he was the lieutenant on the engine at the time. He turns to me, hands me the hand pump, and he goes, just go put the fire out.
Yeah.
So there I am in the basement by myself with the, big old hand pump, putting it out. And we didn't tell mom that story till many years later. Cause I think I was 14 at the time, by myself in the basement of a fire, putting the fire out. And it was just like, that was just going to work with dad at that age.
Yeah, no, and those are probably some of my favorite things, like listening to some of these like old firefighter stories, because they're all, no matter how big or small the fire was, or like, they're always cool stories,
Yeah.
and I'm sure like even your anyone could say is like the service has changed so much over the years, with the equipment that now we have and everything, and regulations and OSHA and all that. And I'm not saying that those aren't things that they're there for a reason, right? We need them, but back then, when when your dad was in the service, things weren't quite figured out yet, so they were doing some crazy things that like they would never let any of us do today, for safety reasons mainly.
He got on Chicago around 1980, and some of his superiors, they weren't wearing their SCBAs. They had the cheater hose because they were still wearing the 3/4 length coats, and then the hip waders. In fact, I still have the old thigh-high hip waders, and I use them shoveling snow on the backyard rink. But they had the cheater hose in their coat where it went down below the smoke, and they were, of course, they probably had a cigarette in their mouth while they were fighting the fire too. But my dad said he always had his air mask on, and that's why he's been retired 10 years now, with relatively good health.
That's great. Yeah, no, but there's tons of those crazy stories where like one of my favorite ones is like that I always said during the fires is where they would again run in with no SCBAs and such, and and it's like when your ears start blistering, it's like, all right, it's too hot, we should probably back out. It's like, what craziness.
That was the thing when they brought in the hoods. My dad even said, I couldn't feel the heat on my ears anymore. But he found if he pulled his jacket sleeve up just a little bit, he'd feel it on his wrist. So it was like he found different things. But like I said, Chicago said 3/4. Even when I was going to work with them, it wasn't until I was in college that I think they were the last large department to switch over to bunker gear, which by far the best snow pants I've ever had are my dad's old bunker pants. Me and my cousins used to go on a February ski trip when I was in college. And when I say my cousins, my one cousin who's a fireman and a bunch of his fireman friends. And the first year I show up, they all have brand new ski pants and everything. And I got my dad's bunker pants. And I'm like, what are you wearing them for? It's like, how many pockets you guys got in those? They're like, just the one. Said, how warm are they? Oh, not very warm. By the end of the night, they're all cold. They're all wet. Half of them lost stuff because they didn't have pockets. So I got the giant cargo pocket. I had dry gloves in both of the side pockets, and they always knew where I was because of the reflective tape on my legs. And the very next year we went, every single one of them had their bunker pants on.
That's awesome.
So I got to ask, what do they have you assigned to? Are you an engine, a truck, squad?
So I do a mix of both. So we have an engine, we have a truck, and we have a medic unit. Um, right now, we've been using the truck quite a bit. Just the truck, we a lot of times the engine gets used a lot of times because it's just smaller, kind of easier to maneuver. It's just
Yep.
I guess it the then be honest, the engine's a little bit more fun with like driving with it.
Yeah.
It handles better, all that. Truck's more heavier, bigger, this and that. But anyways, we're on the truck right now, and obviously we have the medic units. So what we do is we alternate.
Okay.
So we do 48 hours, 96 off.
Okay.
So 2 days on, 4 days off.
Yep.
So typically what we do is say like this upcoming shift I'll be on the medic for 48 hours with a partner. So I'll be more like doing like the medic stuff. And then next shift comes, I'll be back on the truck. So it's
Okay.
kind of like back and forth sort of thing.
It's not the same every day you go.
Yeah, and my department's a little different too. I mean, we're super small. We're just the one station.
Yep.
As opposed to like some of our neighbors, they got like multiple stations and such. So their setup's so different in how they operate and how they alternate and things like that. But with how much, how little our department is and the resources we have, we got to be a little different, in that sense. So there's a lot of like alternating and things like that.
Well, and that's probably good that they rotate you guys that way so that you keep those skills sharp too. Because I mean, my dad saw it in his career where you get a guy coming over to the engine that spent the last 10 years on a truck, and you might as well have somebody coming out of the academy coming over.
It's hard.
Yeah,
it is hard. And that's kind of how it is for us. Like say for whatever reason you had to be like on the truck or the engine for like a month. Like it's awesome.
Yeah,
that's like favorite shifts, driving on the big rigs. But then going back into an ambulance, just like those, like I remember one thing that always like, our instructors in school says, if you don't use it, you will lose it.
Yep.
And that's so true, is like when it comes to medical, like even like you're just like questioning people, if you haven't done it for quite some time, you just like sometimes you catch yourself kind of freezing a little bit, like, oh God, what? Like I don't know what to ask this person, and it's like a partner has to like kind of chime in and kind of get you back in the right direction, and you're like, oh yeah, this is how it goes. And as simple as giving a handoff to a doctor when you get them to the hospital, that can be nerve-wracking, especially if you have, you can have a super nice doctor that, accepted that patient. You can have one that maybe had a bad day that day. And you gotta be on your A game. And if you're not, they will let you know, and if you're really bad, they will call your chief and let him know.
Yes.
And you don't want that.
So it's interesting you talk about doctors and all that. When I was a kid in the 70s, no, I was born in the 70s, but they would play the reruns on the one station when I get home from school. There was a show called Emergency. We would watch that every day after school, me and my dad. I was wondering if you got a chance to see Emergency. That's like a cult classic.
Funny that you mentioned it. When I was going through my fire academy, when we had lecture days, if we were on any sort of a certain subject that emergency maybe had like a scene of, and we had like a fun instructor, every now and then they'd throw on emergency and like, watch this, But a lot of times they'd be like, this is not what you do. It's more like comedy,
flipping the caps up.
Yep. But it's
taking them to the Rampart General.
But tell you what though, little things like that made lecture nights so much more fun. Because I remember some of those days was just like watching paint dry on the wall. Some of the subjects. It's like, certain things, like as fun as the career can be, there's still certain subjects like in any other career or job that's just kind of dry and it's tough to sit through that for an hour.
You talk about sitting through stuff. My dad also taught for the Illinois Fire Service Institute, and they're pretty well known across the country for their fire colleges. And he was part of their auto extrication team, which would go and teach the companies that made the tools how to use their tools. So they had to do sensitivity training the one year. my dad made it about 10 minutes into sensitivity training because, as he says, the instructor comes strutting in and says, "I know you fireman type." And he goes, "What is that supposed to mean?" And she goes, "All you guys do is sit around the firehouse all day in your underwear watching TV." And he slams his hand on this, goes, "Gosh darn it. Nobody told me I'm supposed to be wearing my underwear." So that right there didn't get him off to a good start. And he lasted, like I said, maybe 5-10 minutes. And he was kicked out. He failed sensitivity training. And my dad was never a fan of the TV show Rescue Me with Dennis Leary, but I say they got the firehouse scenes perfect in that show. It was the away from the firehouse scenes that were a little, far-fetched. But I think it's in episode 3, they send them to sensitivity training. And when I saw it, I knew they got it spot on, but I made my dad watch that portion of the episode. He's just sitting there laughing. He goes, "So many memories, so accurate. Yes, that's how it is."
Yeah. No, some of those old shows, they're great. They're great. I catch myself watching them every now and then. It's good.
I still watch Chicago Fire. It's not, if I'm being honest, it's not a great show.
No.
95% of what happens in the firehouse doesn't happen, but I like it. I like to watch it, because they go around my home city. Even though I lived in Minnesota over half my life, like Latvia to you, Chicago's home. B, it's just fun to see the old red and black rigs running around, and see the technical director, Chief Chikarodis, makes a few cameos every now and then. And I told my dad, I said, next time you talk to Chief Chikarodis, tell him he was a great firefighter, but a horrible actor.
It's so funny that you mentioned the colors too. Is so way before my time, and I wish I remembered. Oh, I wish I remembered the chief's name. I want to say it was Chief Krupa, but I'm not. Don't quote me on it. Came from Chicago.
Okay.
Came to the department I work for now. And they at that time they used to have all the rigs used to be like this yellow.
Yep.
He's pretty ugly, and he said, "Not on my time while I'm the chief. Changed it all till this day, red and black, all our rigs. The true like Chicago, colors, and even our hose loads and stuff are some things that he." Picked up, like one of them is called a Cicero load, which is the 2.5, that you typically do in like big buildings, into, your grocery stores or like apartments, you got to go stories high. You get that 2.5 with the gated Y, and then you bring a bundle of 100 feet of 1.75 that you can hook up to the Cicero. And if, pardon my language, shit hits the fan, you can throw that 1.3 off. Just notify your, officer of, what's going on. Or your engineer, have him pop up that pressure, and you got a 2.5 right there.
Yep.
And you got more gallons on the fire.
I know exactly what you're talking about. My dad was on a engine 103 right by. I just texted my dad. Does the last name Krupa ring a bell? He goes, "Yep, it rings a bell." So he probably knew him. They probably worked together at some point. But he was at engine 103 over by the United Center. And my dad had this one firefighter, Denise. She had a heart of gold, but she didn't have the strength to do the job. And it's a high-rise building. Turned out being an automatic alarm. But it was on like the 14th floor. She's struggling to get those two on her shoulders to go up. And I saw my dad go up there, and I was 16 at the time. And so finally I grabbed the hose, both shoulders, and I just start trudging up. Because when I went to work with my dad, I had an old pair of his boots. I had an old jacket of his, and I had one of his old leather helmets. He had a few of the newer helmets, but I liked the leather helmets. And so I'm trudging up the stairs, and the whole time he thinks it's Denise behind him, not me. And we get to the top, to the 14th floor, and he turns around and he sees me. He goes, "What the F are you doing here?" And I go, "She couldn't get it on her shoulders and you needed it. What was I supposed to do?" He goes, "All right, just don't let the Chiefs see you.
Yeah.
So,
Man, what different times, right? I
yeah.
mean, that would be like such a huge no-no today,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I
people
mean,
get fired for it.
back then they had the back of the cab was open. So, if we're summertime, we're rolling down the street, whether it be lights and siren or not, we're standing out looking over the cab. Now everything's all enclosed and whatnot. In fact, when my dad started, they were still riding on the back bumper.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I wish I'd had the chance to experience. Obviously, again, with regulations and things,
In
safety
a parade,
issues.
though, you can.
Yeah. In fact, I guess I did do it once. I did do it once. We do every Christmas. We do like we call that candy giveaway.
Yeah.
Where we drive through, like neighboring places in our city. And there's some lower budget type of places. And what we do is we pack up candy in little bags and we give it to less fortunate kids and stuff. And that's we get to ride on the back then.
Yeah. Down at the Illinois Fire Service Institute, they have this nice little compound, and they have their own fleet of apparatus. And there were times we'd stand on the back bumper and go around. In fact, first time, you'll appreciate this story. So they have the burn towers, and I'm 14 years old, and we're down there, and they're doing search and rescue trainings. They called it saving our own or something, because they always just had one of the instructors pretend that they were down and injured, and they had to pull them out in one of the rooms. Well, I looked at Dad, it's like, well, can I do that? And he's like, yeah, okay. So Mom was down in Champaign with us at that point. With Champaign, Urbana is about 2 hours south of Chicago. And so she knows what we're going to be doing that day. She knows I'm going to have everything on going into the fires. Well, they started out with these new recruits where they take them into the one tower and show them, okay, if you use the direct stream, this is what it's going to do. But if you use the fog nozzle, it's better. It's the first time I've ever had a mask on. And so Dad shows me how it works. Okay, yeah. And he didn't realize he gave me an empty bottle. So we're walking up the stairs, and I go to turn it on, and I'm like, and it's about 2-3 flights where I'm trying to get air out of this thing. So finally I'm like, well, I'm not getting air. I'm not going to keep going upstairs. And they've got the fire going. So I walk down the stairs, and about a half hour later, they're done with this demonstration. He comes down, he goes, where were you? I go, glad to see you were really worried about me that it's been 30 minutes. I said, you gave me an empty bottle. And he goes, I thought that one felt light. So he gives me a bottle, and then we go into the other burn towers and we stoke the fire. It's going nice and good. And he's like, all right, you're going to lay down here in this room. They're going to drag you out. And I'm on the second floor. So before I go in, one of the recruits goes, hey, $10 if you walk out. And I look at him, I go, $20, I'll carry your tools. But it was about lunchtime. Mom came to check on us, see if we needed any cash or anything to go grab lunch. It just so happens, as she's pulling up, I just finished, I don't know if I was stoking the fire or what, but I'm walking out of the one building, and they have all the windows and doors open, and it's just rolling, and I come walking out, even though she knows it's fine.
Yeah.
She's still Mom, and Dad just reaches into his pocket, grabs all of his credit cards, and says, head out to the outlet mall. We'll catch a ride. We'll catch a ride back when the day's over. We're good for lunch. It's fine.
That's funny.
Like, that was one of those memorable evenings.
That's awesome.
Do you remember your first fire?
I do. It was 2018 Thanksgiving. Big warehouse fire. Yeah, I was still a volunteer. Family was out visiting family in New Orleans. I just didn't have the chance to go because they were taking extra time, and I was working at the car shop still and volunteering before I became full-time. And so just knew that I was not going to do anything, sign up for Thanksgiving to go work, and got there, and it was a nice day. You know, we had a turkey and we were cooking and everything, and families were coming over to have dinner at the fire station
Yep.
for all the full-time people that, you know, weren't able to be there. And me and this other guy that works for a different department now, his name's Lawrence, and he went out with me to go train with me and throw some ladders with me before. And it was just a great day. Like,
Yeah.
had good practice, and
Well, and I
we
love
knew
it
we
that
had good food cooking.
it was the older guy teaching the younger guy how to do things. And
Yep.
I forget the exact saying, but my dad always used to say it all the time, listen to the old firefighters so that you become one yourself.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no. So, perfect day. We knew, like, we got a good, day of training in, just felt good, and not a lot of calls that day. All family comes over. I remember a girlfriend came over to the fire station at that time too, and we're all about to sit down and have our big Thanksgiving feast. And someone, we have a little patio by our station. Someone had walked out and looked over and was like, "Look at that black plume over there." And kid you not, maybe even a minute later, cones go off, structure fire. So what our station's mutual aid,
Mm-hmm.
meaning if
Neighboring
a
communities, you
neighboring
help them out.
community needs help, we go help them out, vice
Yep.
versa.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a little too far out of our city, but not too far to where we were able to see this big black plume.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting called out for help. And yeah, we went out, and it was an abandoned car shop. I still never heard exactly if they found anything, what might have caused it. But I mean, that thing was on fire.
Yeah. It was rolling.
I remember bunking up, and that was my first. And I remember I was breathing hard. I was like, I think the engineer even, I was like, "Are you okay?" Because it's like, the headset on, and I'm like trying to get my pack on, and and I look over and I just see this big. I was like, "Oh, this is the real deal,"
Yeah.
But we get out there, and there's everyone, their mom there. Not
Yeah.
only the jurisdiction that services that city. Denver was out there, Westminster, Thornton, like you name it, and we were one of them. I can't say that I did anything cool that time. I mean, that fire was like huge. There were like 3 aerials shooting
Yeah.
from the top, while we were I was one of the guys on the bottom, just sitting on a 2.5, for 3 hours.
As they say, peeing on the fire.
Yeah, but that was my first fire.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, I still thought it was pretty cool, even though there was no like going interior or anything. It was all defensive.
Yeah.
Because it was abandoned. There was,
Yeah. No reason to risk lives. I remember the first fire I went to with my dad. When I was young, he was on the hazmat unit for many years. So when I started going to work with him, the bells would go off and we'd pull up, and it's like, you can't see why we're here because it's a gas. Or you see that puddle, don't get close to it. But there was one, it was an auto body shop. We just happened to be close enough, and the hazmat team at the time was 3 guys, and we were close enough. We're like, all right, we're going to this fire. We'll help out. And that was a fun one too. All I did was stand by the rig and watch them, but the roof collapsed and all this. They were hosing down the buildings that were on either side of it. But everybody always seems to remember their first fire, which understandably so.
Yeah.
What's the best firehouse prank you've either been a part of or seen then?
Whew.
Because that's what gets you guys through the day.
I wasn't really part of this. I was sort of. So one of our captains, he's a captain. He used to again work for our department, but he's since works for another department now. But it was, I don't know. It was. There was a part in time when your mom jokes was a big thing for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And one of the things, it was the captain's birthday, and we always. The trick always is, if they're on shift, is you pretend like you don't know it's their birthday, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of come in, they're like, oh, this sucks. I got to work on my birthday. On top of that, none of my, guys that wish me a happy birthday.
See, in Chicago, you
So
had to
like,
bring in the coffee cake. Even though it was your birthday, you had to bring in the treats.
yeah, well, we typically do that. Like if you go like for a ride along or anything like that,
Well, yeah, you
they're
bring
not
them
come
in for the
empty
ride
handed.
along. In
Bring
Chicago,
some.
they call it daily day, where it's every fifth workday you're supposed to have off, but they can hire you back. And if you get hired, called in on your daily day, you better bring breakfast. And I guess so. The best firehouse prank you've either seen or been a part of. What is it?
So like is it, I don't really get into the pranks because again, like I said, these days it's different times and stuff. So
Yes.
but one of the guys I remember, anyways, it was a captain's birthday, and I don't know, there was some sort of an inside joke going on. There were a lot of mom jokes or whatever you want to call them, and nighttime comes, dinner's over, guys are cleaning up the dishes and stuff, and guy out, from the back, from the bunk beds or whatever, brings out this huge cake with candles, and so everyone starts singing a happy birthday. The captain's like, oh my god, all this cake, and they set that cake on the table, and it's a nice cake, and the cake has just a picture of the captain's mom on it.
Yeah.
And that's as far as I'm gonna go.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. No, I think of some at the one firehouse. If you fall asleep watching TV on the couch, it's nice to take your shoes off. At this one firehouse, though, you learned really quickly not to do that because they would take your shoes and empty the ice trays out and put all the ice in your shoes and then put your shoes in the freezer. Um, and it was also there that I learned to check my pillow before I laid my head down because it was not uncommon to find a 45-pound weight on top of your pillow. So when you put your head down, you'd bounce it off of there. There were the little ones like that, but my dad's got stories upon stories. One guy had just gotten his dress uniform back from the cleaners and it still had the plastic on there. So one of the guys lit a small fire in his locker to shrink wrap his dress uniform.
Yeah,
And
it's
there's so many good ones, but it's one of those where you have to know who you're pranking because
yeah.
so much of it is there's a podcast I listen to. It's a couple guys out of Chicago. Let me look it up. Oh God, I can't remember the name of it. Give me a quick second here and I'll find it in my list of podcasts. I listen to way too many of them. Chicago's Bravest Stories is the name of the podcast. And they had a chief from the suburbs on who's one of the few female chiefs in the country. And she said, it was when they started pranking her that she knew she was accepted. And I think that's true in the whole fire service, regardless of gender, race, anything like that. It's when they start pranking you, that's when you know they've accepted you as one of them. You're part of the
100%.
family.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, that's so true to like any aspects in life. You talk about it, guys. That when people are like comfortable with you, they kind of make some jokes here and there, and it's like not to like offend you or like ruin your day or like it just. But yeah, it's like we like you, we accept you.
Yeah.
If you're getting kind of like the cold shoulder,
Yeah.
not a lot of, you can't even like small talk a person, like that's typically a sign that you're not liked for whatever reason, or maybe you did something, I don't know,
Well,
but
if
that's
for whatever reason, good or bad in the fire service, the meaner the comments, the more endearing they seem to be.
right.
Me and my sister have that kind of relationship where it bugs my wife, and I understand why, but I don't think well, my sister's told me she loves me, and that's when I know she's had too many to drink.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, we just say these mean, awful things to each other, and that's just our ways of saying, "Hey, I like you. I love you." That's our ways of saying it. It's kind of
Absolutely.
the same in the fire service. And I remember asking my dad about it, and he goes, "When you see what we see every day, that's how we deal with it."
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably how it is. So I'm going to switch gears here now. On your podcast, the Between the Pipes podcast, you do things a little differently. You start your episodes off with what do you call it? The
The
crease
crease
warm up,
scramble.
the crease
Yeah.
scramble. Well, I end my episodes with some rapid fire questions. So I'm going to get going with them, and I keep them the same for every guest because I think there's some fun in the continuity to hear, these goalies of all different levels, whether they be NHL Hall of Fame Stanley Cup winners like last week's guest Eddie Balfour, or high school goalies or whatnot. We all have answers to these questions.
See, Joe, you're smarter than me. I try to think of something different as much as I can, and it's starting to become a challenge because there's so many different questions you could ask.
But
right?
That's the fun part of it too, because it's very much off the cuff and they're not prepared for it. So it's getting them warmed up to answer the question. So because you do yours at the beginning, I like that. So what's the craziest coaching moment you've encountered in your playing days?
This was in Latvia. I won't be able to tell you what year it was. Long story short, this was that first season I was telling you about where I was just getting my butt beat and we lost basically almost every game. This was a little after that 62-0 blowout, but the games afterwards weren't any better. They weren't as high. Anyways, there's this one player, I can't remember what team we played at the time, was just beating my pads, saying things, just kind of being mean, and me being a young kid, like I really took offense of it. And he just kind of ruined my whole game and really got into my head. And I didn't play very well because of him, to be honest. And at the game, like the whole time I was like, I'm gonna get this guy. I'm gonna, catch him and I'm gonna beat him up. That was like my plan the whole time. I'm gonna get him. Sure thing. Third. Yeah, it was end of the game. Third period ends. Buzzers go off. He's not too far. I skate out, grab my blocker, and just a cheap shot him with my blocker because kind of he was skating off and like he didn't see me, being a kid, being dumb. So I start fighting him, I start punching him, this and that. Next thing you know, all these kids that were on the ice start brawling and getting involved. And now I'm getting beat up by God knows who, but I've been one of my own players beating me up, not knowing it was me, like it just became this huge thing. My coach sees what's going on and kind of sees the situation. And he was just like, go get him, guys. And he clears the whole bench. Like he just like, go for it.
Yep.
And it was just like this whole like bunch of 11-year-olds just beating the crap out of each other. Funny, like talking about it, so unprofessional now that I like, now that I'm a little older and think of it back, but that's like one that really, really sticks in my head. Because, most coaches probably would have been like, hey, what the hell, I got in trouble afterwards, but the fact of kind of how he had my back during the time, I don't think no coach would have done that.
Yeah.
I would have probably not played.
Also look back at it too, he's got this old Eastern European thought process that probably led to that as well. Like
Possibly.
You've been here stateside long enough where you look at things a little bit differently than maybe he did. Where he's like, yeah, let the boys fight it out. Yeah,
and honestly, it was kind of a good thing in my opinion. I'll be honest with you, I didn't win in the end. I ended up got my butt handed to me. Once all those other players came and started beating on me, like I'm almost certain I got a concussion that day.
Oh boy! By
like being down and getting beat by God knows how many people. Yep. Kind of hit and whatnot. Maybe even kicked. Who knows? Yeah. It was so messy.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's kind of like a lesson learned in a way. You know.
It's character.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So.
So what's your favorite all-time goalie mask?
All-time favorite goalie mask. Thinking. I haven't had many masks. So
Well,
I'm thinking
it
like
doesn't
which.
have to be yours. Most of the time, folks answer with,
Oh, okay.
like a pro goalie mask that they just love the design. Um, you know,
I'll be honest with you. I was pretty drawn to Patrick Waugh's helmet.
the Colorado one.
The Colorado one. He had like a because he had a couple of them that he wore, and I
Yeah,
would say that was the one he wore with the dark jersey. It was like an avalanche coming down.
yeah, with kind of the mountain with almost like had a
Hmm.
mouth on it.
The
Yeah.
33 on
Hmm.
the chin.
Yeah.
I like that one. And there's one more that really sticks out. And oh God, I feel so dumb for not remembering the name of the goalie. Who did the replica of Gary Cheevers?
Oh, that was
In
Steve
Dallas, right? It was
No, the first one was Steve Shield in Boston,
okay.
and the mask painter Todd Miska, Hunter Miska's dad, painted it. So Hunter Miska's playing for Colorado right now. His dad painted that
Yes.
mask.
So one, I feel dumb for not remembering.
And I believe Shields wound up going to Dallas and kept that mask.
So that might have been the one, but that one I thought, I don't know. I've always been fascinated by Cheesy.
Yeah.
I bought it. I ended up buying his. Have you bought his book? Have you read that book?
Not yet. It's in my Amazon cart.
I got a signed copy and everything, Joe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I ended up buying it straight from his site. I haven't read it all yet, but I was like, I was always fascinated about it. And just like the little things reading on, like Google and stuff.
Yeah, well,
about
that
him.
era of the game was so different. Well, we'll never understand it.
Yep. And it was an interesting story, how that paint job became to be.
Yeah, I've loved that story. That was just marks of stitches he probably would have had on his face if he didn't have a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So cool and simple, but yet so creative, right?
Yep, exactly. And it's to the point that goalies are still getting that on their mask, whether they get the Steve Shield, like where it looks like his mask, or just a plain white mask with the stitches on there. It's great. So what's your favorite rink that you've skated at?
Favorite rink that I've skated at, I must say the Pepsi Center, or Ball Arena, I should say. I'm sorry, that changed recently.
It'll still be Pepsi Center.
Yeah. That one sticks out the most to me, just because I never thought in my life that I'll be able to skate.
Yep.
On the Pepsi Center, and I ended up getting an opportunity. It was a adult hockey tournament, and they had some sort of a deal worked out to where you get at least one game on the Pepsi Center's ice.
Oh, cool.
And I got the opportunity to hop on. Again, invited out of the blue, wasn't planned.
Yep.
Great experience.
That's the beauty of being a goalie. If we wanted to, we could skate every night of the week.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's probably the hardest thing, is to say no, especially right now during COVID, because there's some guys that don't want to skate and teams that need them, and it's like, well, yeah, I want to, but I can't because I'm recording podcasts at night, or I got something with my kids, or it's like I'm skating tomorrow night as a fill-in because this is like, we're good, but yeah, it's every night I could skate if I wanted to. What's your favorite stick that you've ever used?
Favorite stick? It was an all wood Bauer stick that my dad got me in Latvia, and I wish I would remember the model of it, but I don't, unfortunately. It was just all wood.
If it was when you were in Latvia, it was probably one of the Reactor 5s, and that is my all-time favorite stick too. Was the paddle kind of flat on both sides? It wasn't as rounded as most of them are.
Yes.
Yep, that would be the Reactor 5. That's my favorite stick too. It was durable, but it was light and had some flex to it. And that paddle being flat, I felt like I had more control of it. And I knew where the pucks were going because it was flat. It wasn't rounded.
It was, and another great, one thing that I loved about it, like it felt nice in my hands. It just felt like it fit right, and it lasted. It lasted so
Yes.
long. It lasted
Mine
so
didn't
long.
because I had a temper and would break them over my knee, but that's a different story.
And then another one that it really pops in my head was a Coho 580.
Okay, yep. I had some of them in
Uh,
college.
that one was I was pretty happy with that one.
Yep.
Um, and then somewhere in between, I'm all thinking Latvia for a reason, but because that was just like the beginning. There was a Sherwood I had, and I hated that one.
Yeah. Did you
For
see the
whatever.
Penguins? The whole team was using Sherwood sticks yesterday at practice.
Yeah, I saw that. I Instagram. Yeah, actually today when I was browsing through.
Yeah, I still
What was?
haven't. I
I don't
haven't
even know what
heard
was the reason
why.
behind it.
It
Yeah.
has to be some marketing thing, but I wish they would go back to wood sticks. I think almost like baseball, where in the pros they have to use wooden bats for safety
Hmm.
reasons. I almost feel like at the pro level, at least the NHL level, they should have to use wooden sticks
Yeah.
because we would see the concussions and goalies go down, I think.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is like one thing that I like about the wood sticks is um that's better.
Yeah, we've
Um
been talking a while. It's gotten dark here too.
yeah, with the wood sticks, it lets me keep it more on the ice, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Because
talked
they're a bit
about that.
heavier, right? So
Yeah, I grew up using older wooden heavy sticks where if I use a composite, I don't, it's too light. I need
mhm,
that weight to hold me down. And I think that's kind of our era. We like that weight in
mhm,
our hands.
mhm. Yeah, I really enjoyed them, and I'd totally rock another wood stick
Yeah.
if I could. No,
Yeah.
most definitely. It's
I'm,
just something about it. It just, like you said, it kind of keeps you more,
yeah.
because I catch myself a lot with these newer sticks. Like you just mentioned, yeah, they're just so light. Sometimes whatever you're doing, moving and stuff, you just kind of lose track and you look down and your stick's up, or it's not
Yeah.
flat down on the ice, and you can make a lot of mistakes that way.
Absolutely. I hear you. So what is your favorite youth hockey memory?
So the team that I told you about that beat me
Yep.
really badly, I did have a chance to retaliate about a year or so later. We ended up winning. I think I want to say it was like 3-2, maybe 4-3, something like that. But we won. And it
Yeah.
was the best day of my life. Like I think I even cried a little bit.
Could have
That
hung the
one
pads up, right?
that one really sticks out. That one I
Yeah.
remember a lot, and that was a great memory. Um, yeah, I think I'll stick to that one. I think that one
That's
really,
awesome.
yeah.
What's the best chirp you've heard on the ice, in the locker room, directed at you, not directed at you? Best chirp.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I've never gotten really bad chirps or anything. I've seen some uh, on like opposing teams and stuff. Um, I'm I'll be my 5 hole's bad, so I've been called a sieve and all that, and it's like it
What
doesn't
goalie
phase.
hasn't?
Yeah, it doesn't phase me honestly at this point. It's just like haha, whatever.
Yep.
But one of my favorite things that one of my old teammates did on beer league. Um, basically, I was on my end, and they're in the zone and whatever, and one of the guys shoots, and the puck he didn't even score. The puck somehow ricochets and whatever, knocks the opposing goalie's bottle off the net,
Mm-hmm.
and he skates over and he grabs the goalie's bottle, like he's gonna, like, oh, sorry about that, and he stops and he takes a couple gulps of his water, and oh my god, it started out a freaking brawl on that end. But I thought it was like the funniest thing, and like it just like offended everyone. Like,
Yep.
how dare you drink my goalie's water? It was just so funny. I don't know. I was just laughing the whole time.
Yep.
Uh, that's like one that kind of sticks out, if you can even call it a chirp.
Yeah. No, I think that is in its own way. So, what's the worst post game beer you've had?
So I can't say I have a worst post game beer, but one thing I will say, anything IPA. I
Yeah.
can do IPA. That hoppy aftertaste, I just can't.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a craft beer snob. I like all the different styles. This time of year I like the darker beers. IPAs aren't my favorite, but I'll drink them. But after a game, IPA is too much.
Uh, uh,
It's funny. I think one of the best post game beers is a good old Coors Light out of Denver. There, well, Golden,
yeah,
Colorado. It's crisp, it's clean. It honestly, it doesn't have much body to it. It's more like water. So if it's cold, it's good.
Joe, that's why we call it the Rocky Mountain piss water over here.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. We were out in Colorado a number of years ago. We flew in. As soon as we landed, we got in the car, drove up to Mount Evans, which was not a good idea for somebody like me who gets migraines because we had to stop on the way down. We went to Red Rock and then we called it a day.
Mhm.
Next day, we drove up to Cheyenne, Wyoming for the rodeo. And then the next day, we went to a Rockies game against the Cubs. And as a Cubs fan, I was like, this is amazing. But we kept driving past the brewery, and never once did we get in there, even though I was told we would stop. But because it wasn't just me and my wife, my sister-in-law and her husband, and my in-laws, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were with us. And I forget who it was, had to go to the bathroom. We stopped at some little gas station along that river that flows into Golden. And I walked around back, and it's just like the most idyllic looking scene with the mountains coming down and the river. And I snapped this picture, and I was like, oh my God, that's beautiful. I showed it to her after we got back. I was like, yeah, that was out behind the gas station. And that
Yeah.
was like, maybe a mile up the road from the brewery but yeah,
Yeah, that's one thing about Colorado is like when you've been here for quite some time, like you kind of like forget that.
mm-hmm.
Like you drive sometimes down the street and like it would be a clear day and the mountains are just like shining at you. It just feels like they're just right there and it looks gorgeous. And it's like every now and then I'll be like, oh wow,
Yep.
and you just like you like forget to like appreciate those little things here.
I try and remind myself of that sometimes here in Minnesota. It's easier to do in the summertime when we're up at my in-laws' lake home and sitting on the lake at sunset and it just
Mhm.
looks pretty. Or in the early mornings when I take a kayak or paddle boat ride. But yeah, you're right. Most of the time we just go about our day and we forget about how
Yeah.
beautiful our hometowns are.
It's just so easy to get that tunnel vision, like
Yep.
you just go about your day. You just like so in your head about whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
trying to accomplish or do that day. And then, yeah, like every now and then you just kind of snap out of it, take a deep breath. It's like, holy crap. Like, look what's in front of me, like,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
When I go places, I try and like just open my eyes and absorb as much as I can. Because I try to remind myself I might not ever get back here, so I need to absorb as much of it as I can. And the
mm-hmm.
simplest little things that I pick up when I'm on vacation versus when I'm at home is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so the next question: when you're taping your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
So I'll be honest, I started out with toe to heel in my young days and then realized it doesn't quite work out. So it's toe to heel now.
Okay, awesome. What's your favorite number to wear?
Uh, when I started out, well, it's funny, and I kind of want to bring it back. It was the team in Latvia. When we first started out, we were so freaking poor in a way. We had no like sponsors, really no funds coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So we had these like plain yellow jerseys. So every team player had like a plain jersey, no logo in the front, nothing, just a
Mm-hmm.
number in the back. Just what you would see your normal beer leaguers wear these days, right? That's what we had. And they had numbers, and then they had the goalie jersey, which had nothing. So it was always a zero. I guess you're a zero, coach always said. And like, it just like pissed me off. And then later down the road, like started getting a little more, support from the city and whatever. We ended up getting good jerseys. And then I started rocking the one because of Artur Zerbe, of course.
Yep.
So that's kind of the one that sticks to me. My favorite, I would say I still wear is one.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, I kind of want to bring back the zero.
You should. No reason not to.
Oh, why not?
You
Right?
know, because that's how many goals you want to allow. So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. So maybe one day I'll make zero popular again.
yeah.
So
Next time the team gets new jerseys, right?
yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So last question, what advice do you have for young goalies?
Oh man, don't give up. And don't let little things, change your mind of like doing what you want to do. Like
Mhm.
like I mentioned earlier, um, just because of a couple people in politics or whatever, I kind of swayed my mind of not playing hockey, and and I beat myself up about it every single day now
Yeah.
because I if I would have pursued it, maybe I would have been able to maybe play college or something,
Yep.
but I just kind of gave up on it. And yeah, just don't let silly things get to you. Just keep fighting.
Great advice. Great advice. So where can listeners find you on social media?
Yes. So I've been a little slow on the podcast right now because of things going on at home, but I promise to be back and running again. But hey, reach out to me at Between the Pipes Podcast. Um, you can reach me out on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. I'm pretty responsive. I get back fairly quickly, and I'm only 7 episodes in. You can find me on any podcast platforms. If you guys want to take a quick listen of me rambling, you're more than welcome to.
And I have to say, if they're only going to listen to one episode, they need to listen to the episode with Cody Smith. That one was phenomenal. Hearing his story as a goalie in New
Crazy, right?
Jersey, you know, being a goalie of color nonetheless, and how he handled that. That one was amazing.
That one, yeah, I must say that was one of my favorite interviews. And Cody's a local beer leaguer here in Colorado.
Yep.
And we just connected through that goalie page that I told you, that was
Yeah.
telling you about earlier. Because what I did was before I started kind of getting the podcast going was I reached out to that page. Is like, what if I did this podcast? What do you guys think? And I was prepared because there's, you
Yep.
get a big group of people, you're either going to get something super
Yeah.
negative or,
Well, and you know how goalies are in hockey. Goalies, hockey players, and firefighters are kind of all the same. If they're like, that's a dumb idea, why would you do that? You're like, okay, so this is a good idea. I should go that route.
right.
Negative is good.
Right. But Cody reached out to me. Cody reached out to me when I messaged me privately, and he was like, hey, that's a cool idea. I've had wanted to do something like that. I'd love to hop on if you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how we connected. I didn't know Cody until then, and what an awesome interview that was, right? It turned
Yeah.
out so great, and it kind of opened my eyes too to a lot of things that maybe I ignored,
Yeah, it was. I think this last year with racial tensions and everything is taught us a lot in general. Now, I was raised to treat everybody equally, and I like to think I have, but I know I've had teammates that haven't. And to hear somebody like Cody, who may have experienced some of the stuff I know teammates of mine probably would have put them through, um, it broke my heart on one level, but it inspired me on another level that he was just like, screw you, I love this game, I'm going to play whether you want me to or not. And it was a phenomenal, timely interview, and it was just one of the best ones I've listened to.
It just worked out so great, and he's such an humble guy.
Yeah.
He would, he's just again one of those kids that would give, his shirt off his back for someone else.
Yeah.
He just very well, he raised, and he, like I said, through the tough times he had to go through, he's learned a lot of things, and he's willing, wants to help. And
yeah,
it like you said it better. It was just a perfect timing with everything going on in the world, and it just worked out so well. And I'm glad.
I'm telling people, if you're only going to listen to one of Keits's podcast. That's the one to listen to, in part because after you hear that one, you're going to be like, well, now I got to listen to the others.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm such a rambler. So sometimes I'm just like, people are probably sick of me listening.
We're on 2.5 hours here, so I'm probably going to break this one into 2 episodes because of that, which is great. I love when the conversation goes, and it's funny because I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to have some dinner when we're done, and my wife's going to be like, well, that was a long one, because we were talking before this afternoon. It's like, you got a podcast tonight? They're usually 60, 90 minutes, and she's like, all right, probably shouldn't be too long. And I've kind of been chuckling to myself as I see the clock just keep going around and around. It's like, yep, she's gonna be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just so cool to sit down, Joe, and like honestly, thank you so much for reaching out to me and doing this, and hopefully we get to do this again.
Absolutely.
And as we're talking, we in a weird way we have so much in common, with the job I'm at right now, and the experiences you had with it, your feel on new goalie gear,
Yes.
like in a weird way, we're kind of the same people, but just
Yeah, and that's what I've loved about this whole podcast is, everybody I've talked to, whether it be you, Eddie Balfour, Kelly Rudy, the one fellow that plays at my high school, Ed, the whole gamut. There's something we all have in common. And it is something we can talk about. And almost every single episode I've said, if you're in Minnesota or next time I'm out in Colorado, I hope to get out there. In fact, we're watching if Cheyenne ever puts their rodeo tickets on sale for this year. We're talking about a family trip out there again, and actually taking the kids this time. Maybe we make it out to Denver, because we always go. Well, I shouldn't say we. My in-laws, they go almost every year to the rodeo. They fly into Denver, spend a few days there, and drive up to the rodeo for the day. If we make it into Denver, I'm definitely gonna reach out to you and say, let's grab a beer.
And another thing too, the girlfriend's been wanting to go to Wyoming forever, and we never made a trip. So I wouldn't even mind making the trip to Cheyenne if we can make it work out.
I've been to the rodeo once, and I am a true city slicker. I went to the rodeo. I have my baseball cap on. I have my gym shoes on, and with all these cowboys. And it was funny because we got there early enough, and they had the mechanical bulls, and so I was like, all right, there's not enough people around to laugh at me as like I'm paid my money and went to do the mechanical bull. And this isn't like going to some honky tonk bar in any downtown area where they're just like a normal setting. The guy's there trying to throw you off in under 8 seconds. And so I get on there. He's like, you got to keep one arm up. And I used to be a sports writer, and I used to cover some rodeos here in Minnesota, so I knew the rules. I was like, yeah, I know. And he's whipping me around, and I stayed on for my 8 seconds, and I got off, and he kind of looks at me and goes, I'm impressed. You earned my respect.
That's cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. So it's the one and only time I've ridden a mechanical bull, but it was a little more realistic than if I did it at the bar.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Well, my friend, it's been fun chatting. We'll be in touch, and Whew. That was an epically long conversation when you put the 2 parts together, but a really fun one at that. Keits has an interesting background that was worth digging into. I hope you enjoyed it at least half as much as I did. Be sure to follow Keits on Instagram at Between the Pipes Podcast, all one word. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, simply by searching for Washed Up Goalie. Visit washedupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights when I'm able to find a skate during this pandemic, and of course, all podcast episodes. If you want some sweet Tendy Talk or Washed Up Goalie apparel, be sure to visit my Threadless shop by clicking the shop link on my website. If you're enjoying Tendy Talk, be sure to give the BLPA Big Show a listen. The BLPA Big Show is part of the BLPA Podcast Network and is simply a couple of beer leaguers chatting about their beer league exploits and at times hot topics in the world of hockey. The show is hosted by Nick Jones and Trish Dangles, and Cara Diabella is pretty much the unofficial co-host these days. I need to thank the band The Zambonis for allowing me to use their music on my podcast. You can download their music on iTunes or wherever you stream music. I'm working on lining up other goalies to talk to. If you're a goalie or have connections to a goalie who I should talk to, shoot me an email at washedupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. Let's not forget, if you're a brand who wants to sponsor the show, be sure to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk and work something out. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.